All right, what I'm going to be discussing is 8070, and I call it the missing link. And what about the missing link? Well, bottom line is that we have always been given end times, future events, the study of the last days from one perspective only. And tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you another perspective. And that other perspective, I call it the missing link. When you begin to understand this other perspective, my gosh, things begin to connect. Things begin to, yes, that's correct, that's right. Things begin to answer itself. So again, basically, that's why I call it the missing link. It's like this, Pastor. It's like for the longest time, I've been going to Baguio. You take EDSA, and you take EDSA all the time, and one day somebody says, "Hey, you don't have to take EDSA anymore." Why is that? They've already built a North Expressway. Really? So here you are now taking the North Expressway, and you are now in Balintawak toll gate in 20 minutes. So the North Expressway was the missing link pala, So basically that sort of thing. So let's begin. All right. So, all right. What we want to do tonight is we want to unlock Matthew 24. All right. Now, why do we want to unlock Matthew 24? Simply because we are looking at it from a different perspective. All right. It's like this again. If somebody is stranded in an island and he's been there, no food, and he's just been calling out for people for help and stuff, and nobody's minding him. But one day, somebody comes into the sunset. He sees something and he goes, "Oh my gosh." And he raises his hands and he shouts, "Boat, boat." Okay. So again, this is the perspective that we have been seeing the Matthew 24 from one perspective lang kami. Okay. So anybody that comes and teaches Matthew 24 only from one perspective. Okay. Now let's put the camera behind that boat and let's see what happens. Okay. So the guys, his arms are also raised up and he screams, "Land." Okay. So bottom line is two perspectives are happening here. Okay. One says boat, the other says land. All right. So you understand that. So what I'm saying here now, Matthew 24, all right, let me give that to you, has always been taught to me from one perspective, from the perspective that Matthew 24, all right, these are the last days. Matthew 24, these are the end times. And Matthew 24, these are the future events that we will soon begin to see. So tonight, I want to propose a totally new perspective where we will now begin to see Matthew 24 as the end of the law age, all right, a finished work, and where Jesus is proclaimed the King of Kings. Okay? All right. So let's begin. Here we go. Matthew 24. Matthew 24, verse 1. It says, "Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple. And his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple." Now, see, Matthew 21 begins with Jesus coming out of the temple. And as he walks out of the temple, the disciples come to him and say, "Well, let me show you the temples here, Jesus." Now, look at this. The temples are totally beautiful. So much beauty in these temples. I mean, they're glorious temples, right? And you can imagine, what did Jesus mean in his next statement? His next statement is, "And Jesus said to them, 'Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Well, Jesus is saying that all the stones and everything, it'll just be demolished. Are you kidding me? This beautiful temple, this temple, folks, if you want to build this temple today, in our today's cost, will cost us about 20 to 30 billion US dollars. You mean to tell me, Jesus, that this beautiful temple will totally be thrown down, will totally be destroyed. All right, so now here's Jesus in Matthew 24, verse 3. He sits down in the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him how? Privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So that verse 3 has three questions the disciples are asking Jesus. Okay, let's look at the three questions. Number one question, tell us when these things be. All right. Number two question, what will be the sign of your coming? And number three question, and of the end of the age. So let's try to answer the first question. Tell us, when will these things be? What things? What things? Well, the things that they heard Jesus speak of earlier. Really, what did Jesus say earlier? Can we look at that again? So here it is. Tell us, when will these things be? That's in 24:3. I think we want to back it up some more. Okay, let's back it up some more. All right, the things. Let's back it up some more. Here, Matthew 24:2. Do you see all these things? He asks. Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Let's back it up some more. Yeah, Jesus here is telling me that the temple is going to be destroyed and everything. Yes, but let's back it up. Why? Let's back it up some more. 24:1. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. Now look at this. Jesus left the temple and was walking away. Honestly, at this point, when I read that, I want to put on my detective cap and my microscope, because I need to investigate. What do you mean by Jesus left the temple and was walking away? All right. If I was a good detective, I want to ask the questions: where, when, who, why, what? All right. Why did he leave the temple? What was he walking away from? How was he feeling when he walked away? So these are questions I want to ask. Okay. You want to ask the questions: when, why, what, where, who, and how. So that means I need to go back some more, right? To the chapter before Matthew 24, right? So again, folks, what I'm trying to explain here or tell you is this: content is everything. Context is everything. Context. Do not read something just one verse. No, read what's before it. All right. Read what's after it. Okay. So Matthew 23:13-35 is where we're going to go. Okay. And here I discover that Jesus is rebuking the Pharisees. Oh, okay. Jesus is rebuking the Pharisees here. So again, it says here, Jesus, all right, leaves and walks away from the temple grounds after rebuking the Pharisees. Oh, okay. And why did he rebuke the Pharisees? Number one, he couldn't stand the rejection of Jerusalem coming to judgment after his warnings. Number two, let me see. Jerusalem refused to acknowledge him as their Messiah. And number three, Jerusalem refused to receive his protection. Okay, now I understand why Jesus left the temple. And he must have left maybe frustrated. He must have left maybe disgusted, but he left. He left the temple, okay? And so as Jesus was leaving the temple, his disciples, I suppose, followed him out, okay? So Matthew 23:13-35, let us understand this rebuke that Jesus made to the Pharisees and to the scribes. Let's understand where he was coming from. Are you still with me? Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. So Jesus here in the temple, is now talking to the Pharisees, all right? And he says, "But woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in." What did he say? "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites." My gosh. The next line, 15. "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you travel land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he is won, you make him twice as much as a son of hell as yourselves." So he was calling these Pharisees hypocrites, okay? Now, Matthew 23:16. "Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold?" And then in 19, he says, "Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift?" And in 23:23, "Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites, for you pay tithe of the mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone." And again, lastly here, he says, "Blind guys who strain out a knot and swallow a camel." You know, folks, his rebuke was something else. Huh? He was calling all these guys, all these Pharisees and scribes, fools, blind guides, and hypocrites. Okay? In 25, he says, "Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence." 26, "Blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also." 27, "Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautifully outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness." All right. And lastly, it says here, "Even so you are also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteousness, and say, if we had lived in the days of our father, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the Pharisees. Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets." Wow, was Jesus mad or what? All right. So bottom line again, Jesus is calling them, all right, all in the same chapter, hypocrites, blind, full of lawlessness, and sons of murderers. Okay. And lastly here in 23:33, he's saying, "Serpents, brood of vipers." Now, very interesting what Jesus here says. How can you escape the condemnation of hell? Okay. So let's go and see that. How can you escape the condemnation of hell? Okay. So again, there it is, the condemnation of hell. So let me show you this verse from another version. This is the New King James Version. Let me show you the New International Version. It says, "Snakes, sons of vipers, how will you escape the judgment of hell?" So condemnation of hell, in another version, the judgment of hell. Then what I did is I looked at the Young's literal translation. And the Young's literal translation of the Bible has a different translation. It says, "Serpents, brood of viper, how may ye escape from the judgment of the Gehenna?" Wow, from the judgment of the Gehenna. So, I look at that and I say, Gehenna? Gehenna? Jesus was talking about Gehenna? So to me, the Young's Literal Translation gives me the correct translation of what Jesus was talking about when Jesus mentioned hell. So when you use Gehenna in the Young's literal translation, Gehenna, you can also say Gehenna in the New King James, right? How can you escape the condemnation of hell? How can you escape the condemnation of Gehenna? How can you escape the judgment of hell in the NIV? How can you escape the judgment of Gehenna? So Gehenna was really used by Jesus, not hell. So hell, and you have to watch Pastor Arnell's video of how of how some of the authors translated Gehenna to hell to fit their doctrine. Okay, so that's Pastor Arnell's video. So it's Gehenna, Gehenna, Gehenna. So please tell me, what is this Gehenna that Jesus is talking about? Well, let's find out. Did you know that when Jesus said hell or Gehenna, he was talking about a dump site of burning sewage, flesh, and garbage just outside of Jerusalem? So if Jesus here, this is his point of view, outside of Jerusalem, there's this fire going on. That was Gehenna. Now, the translators translated Gehenna to hell to make it fit their doctrine of hell. But it really was Gehenna. Now, let's understand, what is Gehenna? All right, here. The Gehenna Valley was thus a place of burning sewage, burning flesh, and garbage. Maggots and worms crawled through the waste, and the smoke smelled strong and sickening. It was a place utterly filthy, disgusting, and repulsive to the nose and eyes. Gehenna presented such a vivid image that Christ used it as a symbolic depiction of hell, a place of eternal torment and constant uncleanliness, where the fires never ceased burning and the worms never stopped crawling. So that is a picture of Gehenna. Let's look at it again. Here's the Gehenna Valley outside of Jerusalem. Now, if you go to Jerusalem, you can ask your tour guide to take you to the Gehenna Valley. It's a nice place now, but before, in those times, it was a place of burning sewage, burning garbage, and all kinds of things were dumped into that hole outside the Gehenna, outside Jerusalem. Okay? So you had this constant burning happening there. Now, Matthew 23:33. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of Gehenna? How can you escape the judgment of Gehenna? I think that's how Jesus really said it. So again, you see that Jesus, as he was rebuking these Pharisees, he said, woe to you, you Pharisees and scribes. How can you escape? Now, here's where Jesus comes in now. All right. How can you escape the condemnation of Gehenna or the judgment of Gehenna? What was Jesus saying? Jesus was using Gehenna symbolically as a future event in AD 70 to say, this is the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Gehenna is like Jerusalem and the temple being destroyed. Okay? So when? In AD 70. In AD 70, you had burning going on. You had all kinds of people dying. I mean, this was a massive, deaths were going on inside Jerusalem. Now, this picture that Jesus saw in the future, he was likening it to the Valley of Gehenna, or the Gehenna Valley. Are you still with me, guys? All right. So in Matthew 23:36, Jesus now says, assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Now, very interesting. All these things will come upon this generation. What generation? His generation. Not our generation, but his generation. Not a future event or not a future generation, but his generation. Because he said this, and this refers to now. All right. And so what is Jesus prophesying here? In AD 70, yeah. In AD 70, Jerusalem and the temple will be destroyed. Right? Will you guys not believe in me? Will you guys not accept me as your Messiah? I want to protect you. I want to be with you all that I want to protect you from the coming AD 70 event. So here's Jesus. He's looking over the city of Jerusalem, and he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones God's messengers. How often I have wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings." All right. Christ wanted to protect his children like a hen, all right, protecting her chicks beneath her wings. But you wouldn't let me. But you wouldn't let me, Jerusalem. You wouldn't allow it. So therefore, he says, and now look, your house is abandoned and desolate. Your house? Yes. Your temple is abandoned and desolate. So Jesus prophesying a destruction over the city of Jerusalem and the temple. All right. So now we go to Matthew 24. And now Jesus leaves and walks away from the temple. So you see now why Jesus is walking away from the temple? You see it now, right? As we connect the dots. Jesus leaves and walks away. Why? Because they didn't believe him. Okay? All right. Do you see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. You mean to say this beautiful temple is going to be destroyed? Is that what Jesus was talking about? Yes, he was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Not only that, but Jerusalem and the temple in AD 70. Wow. That must have been some, and there were no H bombs or atom bombs in those days, folks. Yeah. So again, destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. All right, now let me give you a little bit of history here. Okay. And it's important that you study history. Okay. Because look, listen, why is it? Because eschatology without history is fiction. Now, what is eschatology? Eschatology is the study of end times. If you want to study end times, you have to study some history, folks. All right. So eschatology without history is fiction. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history now. Is that all right? Okay, good. Thank you. So this is an overview shot of Jerusalem. Okay, an overview shot of Jerusalem. Now, off to the right side, you have the temple grounds. Do you see it? Now, outside the walls, you have Israel. Now, Israel, right, was run under Roman Empire. So do you see the conflict now that the Jews had with the Romans? The Jews wanted the Romans out of the picture, but no, they stayed. And the Romans wanted the Jews out of the picture as well. Okay, so a big conflict happening between the two there. Okay, and the thing here is that the Romans wanted to attack Jerusalem for the longest time. They wanted to attack Jerusalem. But what was holding them back? Okay, what was holding them back was that Jerusalem, that city, is a fortified city. It is so well protected. It has 3 walls. All right, here's the first wall. That's one wall of protection. Here's the second wall of protection. And here is the third wall of protection. So the Romans said, if we attack that, there's so many walls we've got to overcome. The minute we overcome one wall, there's yet another wall, and then there's yet another wall. Wow, how are we going to attack this? Okay. So the Romans, I believe under General Titus, said, okay, what we'll do, if they have three walls, we the Romans will build a fourth wall. We will build a fourth wall. Wow. So get this, guys. What is red here in the screen is the Romans. What is blue are the Jews. Now, the Roman strategy. What was the Roman strategy here? Well, the Roman strategy here is, yes, we will build a fourth wall, but the Roman Empire under General Titus surrounded Jerusalem with 20,000 Roman soldiers and cut off all food supplies for 4 months so the people would starve. Did you see that? The Roman Empire under General Titus surrounded Jerusalem with 20,000 soldiers and cut off all food supplies for how many months? For 4 months, so the people would starve. Wow. Something else. Did you get that, Arnell? Okay. All right. So that was their strategy. That was their strategy. In other words, we can't really break down those walls, but let's starve them. So no food, no water, no supplies for 4 months. And so that's what they were doing. For 4 months, they stayed out, they stayed like that. Okay. So again, here, if you read Luke 21:20, it says here, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. And the next verses say, that's why run to the hills, Judea, run to the hills. If you're in the rooftop, get down from the rooftop. Don't go back for another cloak. Get out of that city. Hurry, get out. Because after 4 months of starving Jerusalem, the Roman army finally attacked the city. Now, the thing here is this. The attack was so devastating. All right? The attack was so devastating. This was the great tribulation that Matthew 24 was talking about. This is the great tribulation that Matthew 24 was talking about. Well, what was Matthew 24 talking about? Here, let me show it to you. Matthew 24:21. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. Until this time. It was the great tribulation, all right, was going to happen, all right, and there will be nothing like this, all right, since the beginning of the world until this time, until their time. Not our time. Until this time, in his time. In other words, not a future time, not a past time, in this time. All right? No, nor ever shall be. So, I'm confused when you hear predictions of, oh my gosh, we're experiencing the tribulation today. Oh, the tribulation is coming today. We should do this, we should do that. No, folks, the Great Tribulation already happened in AD 70. It's finished. It's already done. Okay, let me give you from the NIV version, all right? The NIV here says, Matthew 24:21, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until when? Until now, and never to be equaled again. So it was their time. Not our time, not a future time. It was their time. All right. So what happened in AD 70? Okay, you will see that Jerusalem is totally destroyed. All right, the temple is totally demolished. More than 1 million Jews are killed. 97,000 Jews were spared and were sold as slaves for entertainment in colosseums. So that's where you get those entertainment, where they feed the lions. They feed these people to the lions. Those are the Jews, again, that came out of Jerusalem. Right? So AD 70, this beautiful temple, worth today between 20 and 30 billion dollars, was totally demolished, was totally destroyed by the Romans. They totally destroyed that. And Jesus says, see, your house is left to you desolate. Your house, yes, your temple is left to you desolate. So here's Jesus again, talking to his disciples, and he says, assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation, right? Not a future generation, not a past generation, but this generation, his generation. Okay. So let's read that again here. My question here is this: how long is a generation? A generation is about 40 years. So if Jesus Christ dies on a cross sometime in AD 30, you add AD 30 plus 40, and you get AD 70. Okay. And so you can see that AD 30 to AD 70 was a critical time. Because when Jesus Christ died on the cross, I would say officially the new covenant is now in place. The new covenant is now available. All right. And as a new covenant is available, then grace is being preached. Grace is now being preached. Right? Between AD 30 and AD 70, grace is being preached because Christ dies on the cross. But the problem is the temple is still alive. Yes, when Jesus Christ died, the veil on that temple broke in half. You remember that, right? The veil was torn in half. And so as it was torn in half, do you know what they did? You know what these guys did with that veil? They sewed it up. They sewed it up. And they continued to practice temple worship between AD 30 and AD 70. They sewed up that veil and continued practicing, all right, temple worship. So wouldn't you say that the law was also being taught? The law was also being practiced? So you had grace being preached and you had the law being preached as well. Wouldn't you say that is mixture? Wouldn't you say that is mixture? I say yes, that is mixture. All right. So when Christ died on the cross, yes, the new covenant, yes, grace, but not in its full form. I mean, grace still has to come into the picture in its full form. It cannot come into its full form because the temple is still there. Okay, so as long as the temple is there, there's going to be a problem. So when Christ died and AD 70 happened, then we know that the temple was burned by the Romans. All right. Therefore, the law was completely out of the picture. And now grace can now be preached totally. Okay. Question: why the need to destroy the temple? The temple was destroyed to make sure there's only one hope and one Savior, his son Jesus. Another question: is there going to be another temple? Yes. Really? Where? Who? You. You now are the temple of God. Wow. It says it here in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19. Don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? So you've always been the temple where God lives. You have always been the temple where God lives. Imagine that. And then listen to this verse in Acts 17:24. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. He doesn't like to live in concrete. He loves to live in your body, in your flesh. Today, folks, right? Today, you are housing God. Can you believe that? Can you believe that today God lives in you? For in Christ lives all, look at that, all the fullness, the fullness, not the halfness of God in a human body. All the fullness of God lives in a human, all right? So here's a question or a statement. Wouldn't you say where the Father lives is where heaven is? If you say yes, where the Father lives is where heaven is. So where does the Father live today? He lives in me. He lives in you. Wow. So I'm living heaven on earth. Today, you are living heaven on earth. Can you believe that? I can. Why? Simply because grace wins. Pastor, that's it. I'm done.
Wow. Palakpakan. Yes. Are you
Thank you,
blessed?
Pastor Jerry.
Thank you.
Ngayon ko mas naunawaan na.
Very much, Pastor Jerry.
Thank you.
Kasi nung una kong napanood po kayo yung message niyo po sa Indonesia Medyo may translation kasi. Ito
Yeah.
mas klaro.
Yeah, that's
Thank
good.
you po.
Galing, galing. Are you blessed, mga kapatid?
Pastor.
Yes,
Pastor. Yeah, there's more to this. It's just, this is just a beginning of some sort. It's not like the complete 80-70. In other words, there's so much more of 80-70 that we can talk about. I was just giving you like a glimpse now of what's going on. No,
We can do the second half next week if you want. Yeah.
no, I'm not. I'm under your rule. And
yeah, so
Yeah.
mga kapatid, paki-on naman muna yung mga camera nyo. Let's take a class picture muna. Okay lang. Ayan, let's do some class picture. Kailangan po ito ni Pastor Kibuloy.